I don't like Stellantis. And I know, this is from before they were actually Stellantis. Chrysler, Dodge, Jeep, a Stellantis by any other name is still about as useful as Common Core math. This company is the automotive equivalent of Old Country Buffet. You know, there's a ton of variety, none of it particularly good, and a lot of it is redundant, but who cares because we have volume. And yes, I would like my roast beef carved extra thick and load up them baked beans, brother. I ain't got work tomorrow. And look, I get that automakers diversify their lineups to have a presence in every market. Just a whole hand's worth of unwashed fingers, each ruining a different bowl of chili. But with Stellantis, it doesn't feel like there's any sort of organizational consistency to what gets made. The company is like having a friend whose sentences don't logically follow one another. Costco wholesale market? At a time like this? The Jeep Renegade is a Fiat cosplaying as a Jeep, which is an odd choice for the US market when you consider the Jeep Compass had already been around for years, sucking up all the oxygen in the Jeep in name only category. And let me tell you something, I would have loved to have been a fly on the wall of that boardroom when they gave this thing the green light. Hey, I got an idea. Let's make a Jeep that's not a Jeep and then market it to Jeep guys. Let's get a turbo in there. That'll make them rise like it's noon at Mission Barbecue. All the while, Jeep guys are finding out about this and angrily slamming open palms on the keyboards to leave record of their disgust in every unmoderated forum that'll have them, reenacting their own private soap opera called Not Without My Live Axles. Putting this out alongside the Compass felt like the company letting two models duke it out on the marketplace and keeping whichever one survived. But you can't even say it was a particularly entertaining fight, right? It was more like one of those brawls where two guys are just throwing hands and it doesn't seem like anything's connecting. And then they finally get separated, and once all the adrenaline has calmed down and the blood rushes to all the places it's supposed to go, they start to swell up like a Street Fighter Continue screen. I guess what I'm trying to say is that the Renegade was a terrible idea from jump, and arguably the only thing saving it from sliding even further down into the bottom of the bad idea bin is one simple thing. It's actually kind of great. Yeah, I know. How could you like this and not insert other car I should have liked? I know. Let's talk about it, because there is a lot to talk about. If you're a returning viewer, welcome back, and if you're new here, well, I'm the Roman. This is Race to the Bottom, and today we're driving a turbocharged 2015 Jeep Renegade Sport 4x4 with a manual transmission as I continue my search for the worst car in the world. Fiat or a Jeep, Fiat or a Jeep. This is not a Fiat, but it's not a Jeep. Well, I mean, if you want to get pedantic about it, Jeep Renegade. I didn't know homeschooled college was a thing. I mean, it looks sheltered, doesn't it? It's simultaneously off-road capable, but with all the style of an unused lunchbox. And yet, appearances are kind of deceiving. The Jeep Renegade is that weird kid your mom makes you be friends with, and then you find out the kid is actually pretty alright, but you're also not going to speak up for him at the cool kids table because you have a reputation to protect. And it's the wrong choice in the moment, and it'll probably haunt you for years, but as it's happening, it feels like there's really no other choice. Unspoken peer pressure is a hell of a thing. But the Jeep Renegade might just be the most misunderstood car I've ever had on Race to the Bottom. Because it's an Italian car, it's basically a Fiat 500X, but it's also this hot hatch that's really more of a subcompact crossover, and again, it's off-road capable, but it never looks like it's off-road optimized. It looks like a grocery getter. A car for taking a very large dog to the vet. Yet there's a certain I'll show you attitude to this car that caught me entirely off guard. It's powered by a turbocharged engine that overcomes a relative deficit of power with surprisingly solid handling and a stable, more comfortable ride with even-handed acceleration. I didn't feel like I was getting yanked back and forced to stay in line like a kid waiting to board a flight. So let's go over the technical specifications. The engine here is the 1.4-liter multi-air turbo, making a factory 160 horsepower and 184 pound-feet of torque, matched to a 6-speed Fiat C635 manual transmission. This is significant because when people traditionally reference the Renegade being a total dog, they're usually referring to the 2.4-liter with the 9-speed automatic. And I could see how that would be a bad time with its timing chains like fruit by the foot, and its engine that eats piston rings like fruit by the foot. What do you want from me? It's been a long day. Now, our wonderful volunteer Liam did make modifications that improve the overall quality of the ride. So maybe this review should come with an asterisk. For one, it has a lowered and stiffened suspension, and also a rebuilt valve train due to the previous owner allowing ludicrous amounts of time to pass between oil changes, maybe once a year. It also has other stuff like EBC brake pads and slotted rotors, but even acknowledging these changes, we're still ultimately working with the same engine and gearbox that we would have gotten from factory. And well, I keep coming back to how much fun I had driving this, because it's true. I didn't even really push it that hard because I never felt like I had to. Speed is not the attraction here. I know you're probably tired of hearing me say that, but it really isn't. It's the road feel, taking this on twisty roads and cornering in ways that had me wondering if its Italian side was showing. Liam warned me ahead of time to anticipate body roll even with the modifications he performed, but I honestly didn't feel a thing. Maybe I'm just numb to that. But ultimately, this Renegade is simple, but not in a pejorative sense. It just does what you expect it to do without much in the way of complaint. This feels like exactly the kind of easygoing yet versatile Jeep that makes sense as a daily driver for people with more needs than a sedan can satisfy. In addition to interior space, the locking four-wheel drive makes this a good bet for inclement weather, camping in inclement weather, letting the phone ring out on scam calls, letting the phone ring out on people asking for help moving apartments, driving up into the woods to get away from phone calls from the landlord wondering where the rent is. When can I expect the rent? What is that smell? The tenant below says there's a red spot blossoming on their ceiling. Didn't you used to have a roommate named Craig? Can I talk to him? Does Craig have the rent? No, what are you doing? That's my face. If you've seen this man, please call your local law enforcement agency, and so on and so forth. But I think the thing I appreciated the most about this, and it's a very simple thing, and something that Liam also loves about this car, a simple interior design. You have tactile HVAC controls and a radio you can operate without taking your eyes off the road. Plenty of space provided you aren't trying to haul a bunch of particle board to a work site. And I harp on this a lot with modern car design, where it feels like automakers are doing their damnedest to outdo each other in terms of unnecessary excess. But I genuinely mean it. I really do when I say that less is so much more. Fewer distractions, fewer encumbrances, and just more room so that you're more comfortable and feeling less sealed in, surrounded by suffocating technology. And okay, yeah, I'm an old man. I turn 40 next year and I'm not ready, but in other ways I've been 40 for the last 20 years. Call it Arn Anderson disease. And yet, for all the talk about how much I enjoy the gearbox, I'm sad to report that it took me a while to get the hang of this transmission. Hit it.
Oh, did I stop? Fucking A. Why? No. Easy. What the fuck?
You can do this, I believe in you.
Oh, so close.
No, you're going backwards now.
Now I am.
There you go, there you go, there you go, there you go.
Oh.
Perfect.
Jeez, I feel like such a all of this.
Now, in my defense, This gearbox has a particular detail that makes launching it a little trickier than expected. You see, the Renegade and its twin, the Fiat 500X, they're saddled with a clutch delay valve, which apparently causes more or less what the term suggests. It delays clutch engagement. But these cars also feature a spring-loaded damper which completely throws off one's ability to just feel the gears through the pedal. From what I've read, the goal of these features was to make the manual more forgiving for inexperienced drivers, but the end result was that it was a gearbox no one could enjoy because enthusiasts were thrown off by the delay, and inexperienced drivers were finding that the manual skills they learned on the Renegade might not actually be transferable unless those other cars also had a clutch delay valve. But then again, are manual skills ever transferable one-to-one? Every gearbox requires refamiliarizing yourself with the concept, even if refamiliarizing only takes a few seconds. It's part of what makes manuals so exciting. Each one is different. It's almost like they're alive. Yes, that's corny. No, I don't care. But again, despite having fun with this Renegade, I still wouldn't say this car is necessarily cool. Then again, I drive a 2002 Camry, so what do I know or care about whether something is cool or not? Yet the lack of cool factor is important because it may just be part of what led to the Renegade being discontinued. There is this sense of desperation suffused throughout this car. Never mind the weird shape or this split pea soup of a paint job, it's a car that badly wants you to believe in the brand. Here's a game you can play. How many Jeep logos and Jeep symbology can you find on this thing? Anywhere you look on this car, there's either going to be a Jeep logo, or a Jeep grill, or some other Jeep-evoking symbol, which I'm just going to call logos for simplicity's sake, because they are ultimately intended to represent the Jeep brand and its history. Seriously, why are there so many Jeep logos? Jeep logo? Jeep logo? Ooh, a spider. Bigfoot. Ah, spider! Logo here, logo there. Logos, 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 ethos, pathos, kairos, logos. Do they not trust you to know it's a Jeep? This seems like it's potently aware of its own imposter status, which is probably why it's trading on the legacy of the Renegade name for an extra layer of credibility. The Renegade needed to be legitimized as a Jeep by invoking the historical significance of its namesake. Because the name dates back to the AMC days, when this was a package on the CJ, and later on the YJ, before taking a 20-year sabbatical and returning as its own model, attempting to inherit the more rugged, all-terrain legacy of that rebellious nameplate, but rejecting the cosmetic styling that could have attracted people to it in the first place, because say what you will about the Wrangler styling, it's iconic. But then, if it were to look like a Wrangler, there would be no reason for it to exist as its own model rather than simply being a package on the Wrangler. But what we got was something closer to a Jeep Compass than the Renegades of old, which is not really the worst thing in the world if you consider this as a vehicle made for flyover states and people with 3 different pairs of hiking boots. Hey brother, have you seen Twisters yet? They don't make movies for the Heartland no more. They don't make good old disaster movies no more. I miss movies where the final boss is the weather. I want movies that reaffirm that I'm supporting the right brand. And if I can't have a Ram, well, hell, I'm gonna have a Jeep because there are only 3 constants in this world. Death, taxes, divorce, Dodge, Jeep, and Dodge again. Now, ultimately, you could argue this really bit the bullet because of the Compass eating into the sales and a bit of additional redundancy caused by the then still living Jeep Cherokee prior to its recent discontinuation. Or maybe people were just spooked by the Fiat association, I don't know. But I think it's kind of a shame because this is a fairly well-rounded vehicle. It isn't the best at any one thing, but at least in my experience, each of the things it does well. It's just sound. But while I didn't hate the car, I don't think I loved it either. It's nice and it's fun, but it also feels oddly disposable, an experience you enjoy but ultimately don't remember unless you're back in the driver's seat again. Now, this is normally where I'd cut to the top 5 and bottom 5 to say where I'm placing this Jeep and where it ranks in the race to the bottom. But this is a first since starting the 2-list system, because this Jeep Renegade falls almost perfectly in the center. Which is boring, I know, but to make either list, I need to feel a greater enthusiasm for the car, which this ultimately didn't inspire. Yet a lack of passion doesn't indicate disdain. I don't have to love something to admit how much I liked it, which leaves a lingering feeling of disassociation, because you're not supposed to like this. Nobody is. Yet plenty of people do, and now I'm one of them. Ugh. Perhaps the stain of Chrysler and its previous products shouldn't be held against its present or its future. But then, it can be hard for the future to overcome the weight of a tumultuous past. Sure, you can be selective and refer back only to the history that reinforces your current product, as the Renegade echoes those earlier CJs and YJs in ways both trivial and significant. But there's more going on here, right? Okay, so in all our years of using literary theory and criticism to talk about cars, we've never actually thought to try and make our own theory. Well, I'm going to give it a try by making up my own. Of course, there's every possibility it's already been thought of, but goes by a different name that I don't remember. But here I go. Isolational metonymology. Isolational metonymology, or generational shorthand. This is the study of how a single generation of a work of art creates meaning for every iteration of that thing, no matter how much it eventually changes. Indeed, especially when it changes. The Oxford definition for a metonym is a word, name, or expression used as a substitute for something else with which it is closely associated. The example that always gets used for metonyms is a person saying they're loyal to the crown or they're loyal to the flag. Obviously, they're not talking about loyalty to those physical objects. They're pledging their allegiance to the institution it represents. But this changes if the object we're using for the metonym isn't fixed, if it changes over time, such is the case with something like a Jeep. You can tell anybody within earshot that you've always wanted a Jeep, but how many people are going to think you mean this Jeep? In the realm of isolational metonymology, the Renegade introduces us to a symbolic echo of a past namesake that its most recent iteration no longer resembles. It seeks the acceptance that its namesake enjoyed while rejecting the path it took to get there. I don't remember if I've already used this in a script, so forgive me if I have, but the old saying goes that you should never meet your heroes because they'll only disappoint you. But sometimes it's worse to meet your heroes because you run the risk of them being exactly as good as you thought, and then you're left with the perennial question of, now what? Well, the answer to now what is you keep going. You find new things to enjoy, new things to be surprised by. You go drive cars you think you'll hate and you let them surprise you. I accepted Liam's offer, convinced I was going to hate this car and get to make an all-time burn on this Renegade. And maybe it skates by on the technicality of Liam's hard work, and I thank him for his volunteering and for generally making a wonderful shooting day. And I also thank him for his patience. But whether it's the work Liam did or what came with the Renegade from factory, a Renegade I enjoy is still ultimately a Renegade, and a Renegade is still technically a Stellantis product, and a Stellantis by any other name is probably the biggest surprise I've had this year. Buy me a Jeep, buy me a Jeep, 'cause I couldn't buy around. It's a Jeep. It's a Jeep, don't say it's just a new Fiat clone. Don't feel bad for me, I'm still fine in the snow. Deep in my bowels there's a Jeep I'd really like to own. It is a renegade. We're due for a better day.